So there's 4 different types of loss, of grief, if you may call. And the most common one amongst humans is the death of a loved one. How unfortunate is that situation? I have lost loved ones in my life, but never in my immediate circle of my family. And I don't know what it would be to lose a human that I love so much as if they were the blood running in my veins. If you have encountered the love of someone in your immediate family, or somebody like a grandparent that has passed away, in your secondary family, it's very hard. I recently lost 3 of my grandparents in less than 18 months, and they were already close to their 90s or in their 90s. Life gifted them to us for such a long time, to me and my cousins, and that was hard. Because when you lose a loved one, it's like you're putting in a coffin not only a body, a soul, memories, laughters, tears, talents, right? And so all that is extremely, extremely painful. The second type of a very common grief amongst humans is when you get diagnosed with a terminal disease. And so cancer is amongst the most popular diseases that takes humans' lives. And I've had cancer come and knock on the door very close into our family. I've lost family members due to cancer. And I have seen how unfortunate that situation has turned upon our family. And not only that, how it just steals the soul of the person that is being diagnosed. And so what happens is that the patient that gets diagnosed with a terminal illness, say cancer or any other terminal situation, they get into a frustration and they might take it out on themselves. They start grieving the healthy person they used to be. They start resenting those around them. I've seen people even take it out on the healthcare worker that is giving them the news of a terminal illness. So this type of grief is very common, and I am 1,000% sure it has knocked on the door of you, of your life, of your family, and those around you. The third very common grief around humans is the loss of a job. When you start a new journey, it's always happy time, happy moment. You're vibing, you're feeling it, you're in your purpose, you're gonna get a paycheck, you're finally getting to that financial stability you've been looking for. It might be your dream job. What happens when things abruptly change and you no longer could be at that job? It might be because a familial situation is not allowing you to be engaged in that job for some reason or another. It might be because you encountered some nastiness in the workplace. It might be because after all, it wasn't what you were thinking you were going to do. It might be because after all, it's not connecting to what you thought was going to connect with you. It just might not be the job that you wanted. Or what if this was your company? And you've been in this company for 20 years and you built this company from scratch and it's time to say goodbye. When I think about this grief, I think about the amazing Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs created Apple in a garage with his best friend. He took this company to be a public company. This company right now does, if I'm not mistaken, over $150 billion of profits every quarter. And don't quote me if I'm wrong, right? But it is the most successful company on the planet. Imagine what Steve Jobs felt when he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. So he was going through the second grief I listed. And then he had to say goodbye to his baby Apple and everything that he did to bring this company to success, because it was about to go broke several times. And it required many rounds of investments to keep it alive over its tenure. And so think about that man. If you have found yourself, or you are right now in a situation where you're at is just not making you happy, it's a grieving process that you have to go through. And the fourth very common grief amongst humans is when you're ending a relationship with a loved one, with maybe your mother, your father, your partner, your spouse, or even a best friend, or somebody that you've been with through many years of thick and thin. And so I've been through a spousal divorce, and I've also had to divorce long-term friends that betrayed me. However, I don't know if I betrayed them first and they ended up betraying me. You know, I live in a perspective where I'm not here to judge anybody. I understand the facts, but I'm not perfect. And what if I triggered some of the facts? I know that in my divorce from my spouse, it was a decision that I abruptly made based on my ego and my egocentric self that was totally lost in that point in time in my life. I'm talking about, it's gonna be 7 years this year since I went through my divorce. And so when a romantic relationship ends, it's very common for both parties to feel like they're losing a part of themselves. You might even feel regrets, you might get anxiety, you might get depression, because whether you're in a toxic relationship or not, if you're going to be ending a relationship, it's for a reason. Something is not going right. You know, I have friends that, I'm 36 years old now, that they've been my friends for 20 years, 22 years. So they've been there through my teenage life, into my adulthood, and through thick and thin. And we're still there, and we're still standing strong. There's other relationships that have been not even 5 years old. And so if a relationship ends, it's for a reason. However, whenever the relationship ends, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna create anxiety, it's gonna create sadness, depression, you name it. These are the 4 different types of grieving process. Go into your workbook, and under these grieving process, kind of depict a situation where you found yourself living in a grief of these 4 common griefs. And in the next module, we're going to understand the different types of grieving processes that we can go through.